Hi, my name's Liz Wallace and welcome to Meals on Wheels Food Safety Training Course number 4, and this is on hygiene and cleaning. Now if you're doing this course you will have already done the first course, which was the introduction, so you'll know that for Meals on Wheels we have sensitive consumers. We have people that are going to eat the food that we produce or deliver to them who may be elderly, or they'll be ill or convalescing, or they'll have a weakened immune system. These sensitive consumers, they're people at risk, and they're the ones that Meals on Wheels have put all of their procedures in place to cover, to make sure that they get food which is good for them. From your last course, you'll also know that there is three types of contamination. There are three types of contamination. There's physical contamination, chemical and microbial. The chemical and the microbial is invisible, and the physical contamination, we can see where it is. Now with the microbial contamination, that's bacteria. Some are dangerous and some are not. Physical contamination can be things that are in the food that should not be eaten. So it may cause illness, it may cause choking, it could cut their mouth or their esophagus, that type of thing. So physical contamination needs to be looked at as well. The other thing is chemical contamination, and that can be where there's cleaning chemical residue left on a bench. That contaminates food, food is eaten, and that person may have a reaction to that chemical. If they're already a sensitive consumer, things like that can actually react on them very easily. The other thing that can have chemical residues are fruit and vegetables, and we discussed that before. Fruit and vegetables should always be washed. Doesn't matter where it's come from, it should always be washed. All of these hazards though can be minimised through correct hygiene. So you must follow your Meals on Wheels procedures rigidly. They are there to protect you as well as our sensitive consumers. Most people are immune to the amount of bacteria that they have around their own home. But when more bacteria is introduced to them, whether it's in their home or whether it's in a dining room or something like that, when more bacteria is introduced to them, that's when their illness can become worse, or if they're elderly, they can get sick. All of these things can eventually lead to them becoming very, very ill, or even worse, they could pass away, they could die. Now the food safety standards set out temperatures which are used as a guide, and we've already discussed all of those temperatures to control bacterial growth, but they also give guidelines on hygiene. And the hygiene is both for kitchens, for dining rooms, as well as for plates and cutlery and all of the implements and things like that. The other thing that the hygiene standards take into account are us, the people. It's personal hygiene as well. Meals on Wheels have used these standards or the laws, and they've drawn all of their procedures up to cover all of these things and to make sure that we know what we need to do to keep our sensitive consumers safe. Now, personal hygiene. When you're preparing or serving food, whether it's put into a container and you deliver it, or whether it's served in a dining room on site, it's very, very vital that you carry out all of your hygiene and cleaning procedures. If the meal's packaged, or even if the food in preparation is packaged, the bacteria on your hands, for instance, can be transferred to that pack, and then when we handle it, or if we sneeze over the pack, heaven forbid, if we sneeze over there, we're producing a lot of bacteria and putting it onto that pack. It's then handed to somebody, or it's put onto a prep bench, and the bacteria are then on that bench, on that pack, and also on your hands. If this bacteria is transferred to an elderly or a sick person or someone with weakened immune system, once they've touched it and they've got that bacteria, if they've taken the pack from you or had a meal from you and you've accidentally contaminated it, once they touch their face, they're transferring that bacteria to them, and that can actually make them ill. So we must be very mindful of the way all of this contamination happens, and make sure that it doesn't happen, so that we keep our food safe. Now, one of the main things that we need to do is you need to wash your hands. Hands are like the first point of contact. So wash your hands. You need to wash your hands after visiting the toilet. And believe me, I've seen a lot of people walk through a toilet and not wash their hands after going to the toilet. After coughing or sneezing. If you cough or sneeze out, or you wipe your nose or you cough or sneeze onto your hands. You must wash your hands before going back to any sort of food handling at all, or handling the meal packs to hand out to people. After you deal with waste or rubbish or completing any cleaning jobs, you wash your hands. After touching or dealing with any chemicals or chemical containers, wash your hands. And after eating food yourself or after smoking, once again, you need to wash your hands. Now, cuts and sores. If you have a cut or a sore on your hand or on your wrist, it needs to be covered with a Band-Aid. That cut or sore will have an enormous amount of bacteria in it. And if that bacteria is transferred to any of the meal packs or transferred to people or to the food, it can carry huge amounts of bacteria which can contaminate and can cause harm to our sensitive consumers. Given the right conditions, those bacteria will multiply and that person can end up, if they're already ill, they can end up dead. Now, working in food preparation, if you have a cut or sore on your hand or your wrist, you must cover it with a Band-Aid. Now, the Band-Aid needs to be brightly coloured. The reason that it needs to be brightly coloured is that if for some reason it accidentally fell off and it fell into food, you can find that Band-Aid again. Once you locate it, then you take all of that food that's been contaminated and the Band-Aid and you throw it all away. The other thing that you need to do if you've got a cut or sore on your wrist or your hands, when you've covered it up with a Band-Aid, you need to wear disposable gloves. That's to cover it over to make sure that you don't lose that Band-Aid. If for some reason it did fall off prior to putting on your gloves, that's when you need to find it. If you've got any other medical condition, if you've got a weeping spot or something that requires some sort of medical attention, if you've got diarrhea or vomiting or nausea or ear or eye problems, then it must be reported to your Meals on Wheels coordinator or your contact in Meals on Wheels. With many of these problems, you can actually contaminate the meal or you can contaminate packs, and this can end up with the client and it will actually cause them a lot of harm. All of these things, your body's getting rid of loads and loads of bacteria. With diarrhea, with vomiting, all of that sort of thing, you're getting rid of loads of bacteria. It's contaminating you and it will contaminate them. Follow your Meals on Wheels procedures rigidly with all of this stuff. This contamination actually can have really, really bad consequences, dire consequences to our sensitive, elderly, ill and immunocompromised consumers. People, by the way, are the main sources of Staphylococcus aureus, and you may have actually heard of its cousin, which is golden staph. And how much trouble does that cause in hospitals and things? Okay, now hand washing. Hand washing is so important. Now, this needs to be done using soap and warm water, and it needs to be done in a hand basin. Don't wash your hands in a sink. You also need to dry your hands and use a hand towel or something, not your trousers or your apron. Don't use them to dry your hands. Now, don't wear protective clothing into the toilet. Remove it before you go. If you've got disposable gloves, apron, hat, all of those sorts of things, remove it before you go to the toilet. Get new things when you come out. Disposable means just that. It means once it's used, it's a single use, you throw it away afterwards. Don't think you're trying to save a lot of money, because you'll actually cause more harm by doing that. Don't think you're trying to save a lot of money by reusing these things. When you wash your hands, use soap. Put the soap onto one hand, wet your hands first, put the soap onto your hand, then wash your hands as vigorously as you can. Interlock your fingers so you get in between as well. Do your thumbs. Do the backs of your hands if you're in food prep and all of that sort of thing, and probably if you're delivering meals as well. Wash your wrists, because all of that is contact surface. So wash all of it like this, as much as you can, backs of your hands. If you've got nails, do a little bit of that as well, just to get underneath there. Get all the soap covering your hands, because the soap is going to remove all of that dirt and grease and bacteria. Then wash your hands under warm water, rinse it all off under warm water, and dry your hands properly using a clean, dry hand towel. Now, coughing and sneezing, sometimes they can sneak up on you and you don't have time to go out or something like that. If you are handling food, sneeze into your inner elbow if you can, because that keeps it away from spreading out onto food surfaces and things like that. If you've done that, or if you've had to cough into your hand, or you've sneezed into your hand, then go out, wash yourself down, change your gloves, change whatever you have to change, and then come back into your food prep. Jewellery. Don't wear too much jewellery if you're doing food preparation. If you're delivering meals, that's fine. Wear whatever you're comfortable with. But if you're in food preparation, don't wear too much jewellery while you're working around food. If you have to wear a ring, like I have a wedding ring, if you have a wedding ring and you don't want to take it off, then wear disposable gloves over the top. If you've got face piercings, you need to actually put a band-aid over them, because all of these things, and earrings and things like that, they can actually fall out into food. There's a lot of people who lose stones, lose diamonds out of diamond rings, who lose precious stones out of earrings and things, and it's purely because these things aren't well sealed in there, and they can actually fall out. If it falls out into food, someone may end up with your diamond. Perhaps that will be a good thing for them, but the other thing is perhaps they might choke on it, or they could cut the inside of their mouth. Our elderly, our sick and immunocompromised people are the people we need to protect. If you're working with food, don't wear too much jewellery. Watches, you shouldn't wear a watch when you're doing food preparation, and the reason is that bacteria gets underneath it. You can't clean underneath there. That you're wearing a disposable glove over your ring, that's fine. Under your watch, you'll end up with a lot of bacteria. Take your watch off, put it somewhere safe, and don't wear that during the food preparation. Smoking. Smoking's only allowed outside. Don't ever smoke in a food preparation or a food storage area. And wash your hands before you return to food handling. The reason is that you've got your hand up close to your mouth while you're smoking, you're breathing on your hand, you've then contaminated it with your bacteria, so you need to wash your hands before you go back to it. Eating and drinking, same sort of thing. Only in a lunch area or outside. Never eat or drink in the kitchen area. If you need to take a little sip of water or something like that because it's a very hot day, then do so, but never eat your lunch or drink a whole cup of coffee or something like that in a food prep area. You should always wash your hands after you've eaten your lunch and you're drinking, and when you're going back to work, wash your hands again. Sickness. The last thing, sickness. If you've got diarrhea, vomiting, ear, eye and nose complaints, all of those sorts of things, enormous amounts of bacteria, talk to your Meals on Wheels coordinator or your Meals on Wheels contact, and it's so important. It's the law, and it's a Meals on Wheels procedure that you don't handle food while you have this complaint. Do something else, do some other task that's not going to be compromising the food. Okay, next thing, protective clothing. Now, protective clothing is to protect the food from us and not the other way around. A lot of people think that protective clothing is there to protect their street clothes from getting dirty. No, it's not. It's to stop any bacteria that we've got from getting onto the food and the food surfaces. Now, normally it will be hair nets, so they might come like this, and then you stretch it out so that it's a hair net, or they might come like that. Now, with a hair net, put it on so it covers all of your hair. Some people put on hair nets so that they have, and you wouldn't have earrings on, obviously. Some people wear a hair net so they've got little curls hanging out the side or something like that. Now, it may interest you to know this is not a fashion item. So you don't have little curls hanging out the side and a fringe and things like that. All of that allows hair to drop into food. Hair carries with it bacteria. Now, hair by itself is not necessarily going to kill you. If you ate a hair, it's not going to kill you. It does carry bacteria with it, so it does allow that increased bacterial load into the food. But the other thing that it shows is a lack of care or a lack of personal hygiene. So when you wear a hairnet, wear it properly. If you're just going into a kitchen to give someone a message, wear a hairnet, unless someone can come out to see you. And really, if they come out to see you, they need to change their clothes. It's better if you can wear a hairnet to go in to see them. The other thing that you probably will be wearing are disposable gloves. When you're wearing disposable gloves, put them on after washing your hands. So wash your hands first so your hands are clean, and then put your disposable gloves on. The reason for washing your hands first is, if you noticed when I put my gloves on, I'm touching the outside of those gloves. So I'm transferring bacteria. If I've washed my hands, then they're as clean as they can be. And when I touch the outside of the gloves, when I'm pulling them on and all of that sort of thing, that's okay. It's minimised. It's as much as we can do. So wash your hands before you put your disposable gloves on. When you're taking your disposable gloves off, hold one by the wrist, pull it over your hand. As you've got it there and you haven't touched your other hand, pull it off with that, then pull this one over the top so you get them both in together. Get them both in together like that and chuck them in the bin. The other thing is a disposable apron. So when you're wearing your disposable apron, if it's disposable, fine. Use it once, throw it away. Once they get too contaminated, if you're still in the kitchen and you've been cutting up raw stuff and you've splashed yourself or you've touched raw chicken and things like that onto your apron, then please take it off, throw it away, get yourself another one. You would be changing your disposable gloves if you're moving from food to food, so change your apron as well. Your hat can probably stay. Now, the order that you put things on, first put on your hairnet, because as you saw when I put on my hairnet, I was touching my hair and I probably have some hairs that have fallen down onto my clothes. The next thing, put on your apron, because you're going to cover up anything that's dropped out of your head and onto your clothes. Put on your apron second. Next, wash your hands and then put on your disposable gloves. So that's it for personal hygiene and protective clothing. Now, next thing, cleaning. Cleaning involves, firstly, scraping away all foreign matter and disposing of it. Secondly, clean the item or the area using hot water and detergent. The job of washing and using detergent is so that you dissolve the grease and you remove the dirt with it. Rinse with clean water once you've finished doing the first lot of washing. Rinse with clean water, and that will wash away your detergent, your dirt and your dissolved grease. The next thing, and the very, very important thing to do, is to sanitize. And you should sanitize using either a chemical sanitizer, if you have one, or using your dishwasher. If you're using your dishwasher, then it needs to have a rinse cycle which goes to greater than 82 degrees, because 82 degrees is our sanitizing temperature. If you're sanitizing using a chemical, then use it to the manufacturer's specifications. Always make sure that you read the specs and use the correct dilution rate, because you want to make sure that you're going to kill those bacteria. And the job of a sanitizer is to kill as many bacteria as possible, to bring the bacterial load on surfaces, on implements, on all of these things, bring the bacterial load down to a safe level. Don't forget, not all bacteria are going to be reduced with a sanitizer, so don't think that the surface is completely clean or something like that. It's just been reduced to a safe level. Now the next thing, pests. Pests spread many types of bacteria and many types of diseases. There's cockroaches, rodents, flies, all of these things. They eat refuse and then they come into the kitchen and they'll eat the food, or they'll walk on food items, or they'll walk on benches or implements or something like that. Flies, for instance, they regurgitate their stomach contents onto food or onto a prep surface, and then they suck it up with a sponge-like mouth part to take that nutrient back into them to eat. So all of that is producing an enormous amount of bacteria, and that bacteria is enough to make one of our elderly, ill or immunocompromised people even sicker. So all of these things need to be looked at. You need to make sure that your prep benches, your preparation areas, your storage areas, all of your implements, make sure your implements are stored away so that they're not going to get contaminated. After you've done all of your due diligence, you've done your cleaning, you've done your sanitizing, and if you've left it in an open container, anything could happen to it once again. Although meals, when they're delivered, are covered and hopefully have not been contaminated during the processing stages, if we allow any contamination to happen to that container by, say, leaving open bags or leaving things where it can be contaminated, or coughing or sneezing over something, we're introducing those bacteria into that, to that client. We must protect the client. That's the whole reason for doing all of this. You can never tell what contamination may have been picked up from a surface if something's been placed down, so never put anything on the surface. Be mindful of the way contamination happens. Direct, indirect and cross-contamination. Be mindful of the way that these happen and be mindful of the things that you're doing. Don't just wear blinkers. Look at what else is happening and make sure these people are protected. Follow your Meals on Wheels procedures. They're there to protect you. You have legal as well as moral responsibility to help protect these people, as well as Meals on Wheels to protect you. So follow your procedures and make sure you keep these people safe. Treat the food as though it's going to be served to one of your family, not to just a stranger. Thank you so much for helping out Meals on Wheels, and thank you for listening today.